Welcome back to another episode of Live with the KHive, where we sing only for the Queen. And we have our great panel here today. HBCU Drew, Reese's Receipts Colbert, aka Black Women Views, Get Into a Bag, rapper, singer, Sydney A, Mocha Latte, Not Too Heavy on the Whip, Maya Contreras, Heather Tending to Her Tulips, Rose, aka Heather Rose. And then you got me, tired ass Kenny King Clapbacks, y'all. And today we have some great topics to talk about. So the first topic we're going to talk about is going to be war on people of color, Kamala news, and we're also going to be talking about erasure.
But before we get into that, the real question is, what is KHive? KHive is a bunch of ordinary people with extraordinary abilities who decided to speak up in our advocacy for Kamala Harris. We recognize her past, we've researched it thoroughly, we understand her present, what she brings to the table, and we understand the direction that she wants to bring her work in the country for the future. So we decided to open our mouths. So in the words of John Legend, we're just ordinary people. We just said something.
Okay, getting to our first topic, which is going to be war on people of color. We're having a lot of issues right now. I don't know if you guys have been living under a rock or not, but there's this movement called Open America, where these white militias are coming out in troves to capitals with AR-15s, threatening government officials to open America so they can get a haircut, endangering and threatening the lives of so many people, knowing that 57% of most fatalities due to COVID has been African Americans or people of color. And this is a really serious situation. And I don't know how you guys feel, but this is really honestly pissing me off. It's weird that these people can literally go with AR-15s and be seen as patriotic, but yet Black people couldn't even kneel against the national anthem in peaceful protests to highlight, police brutality. But we were seen as militant, we were seen as traitors. But these people are literally showing their explicit bias and their explicit blatant hypocrisy on how there's differences and double standards when it comes to Black people in America. And I don't know how you guys feel about it, but it's really devastating to me that the police officers are allowing these people to go outside with AR-15s, knowing that they have enough ammunition to outgun them 2-1. But yet a Black man is literally seen as a threat for threatening a police officer just by questioning a police officer's intent of stopping him at a traffic light. I don't know about you, but we need some real leadership, and we need somebody to speak up and speak out against these people, because they're literally putting everyone at risk, including themselves.
I'll jump in on that. What's tough is I'm seeing parallels to when this happened before. I'll go back as far as Andrew Johnson after Lincoln was assassinated. These are the same tactics. When people are talking about systemic oppressions, this is what we're talking about. An institution that allows this type of intimidation. It is reminiscent of Black codes. What they're trying to do is intimidate people, pre-intimidate people, by the way, before voting starts. So we see the seeds of what's happening. My frustration is that the media may not see what's going on, but I think we all see what's happening right now. We know that they're paid protesters, which is hilarious because we always get accused of being paid protesters, right? Ferguson was they said a protester. That's also stemming in anti-Semitism by saying that Soros paid for it. And then, of course, we have documented evidence that this is being paid for by a libertarian billionaire that is organizing these. No, he doesn't care about the health of those protesters either. They're just the militia in his army for the bigger cause, which is to intimidate us before the election starts.
So what do you think we should do in terms of how we can go about literally what should we do in this crisis? How do we literally get to these people and make them understand that what they're doing is wrong? Is there any negotiating with these people?
Personally, for myself, no, I don't think there is any negotiation, because one, we're between a rock and a hard place, because if someone speaks out against them, they get to use that person to put their ire, to have an enemy. That's why it's so difficult to engage with groups like this, when they're kind of holding us hostage in a way. All we can actually, in my opinion, do is try to figure out how we're going to organize. We have 192 days really to make a plan of how we're going to vote and get this madman who wants us to ingest poisons into our body, how we're going to get him out. So to me, it's about organization instead of confrontation.
What can government officials do in order to, get these people to stop? Because honestly, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I was also reading an article from the APR where it says gun purchases actually gone up. So I'm very confused and I'm very concerned by that. Ever since the COVID-19, the guns purchases have actually spiked. So I don't know about you, but that's very alarming.
Well, I would say that officials need to get in contact, maybe not say anything publicly, but get in contact with local and state law enforcement heads and say, we need to make sure the laws are enforced. What you're seeing right now, those protests, those are unlawful assemblies. Nobody's handing out permits for those type of gatherings under these current conditions. Those are unlawful assemblies. Those are violations of ordinances. Laws need to be enforced. Now, you can go and give the lawful order, please peacefully, disperse. If that order is ignored, you then move to plan B. You start arresting people and moving down the line. If they resist, you use the appropriate level of force in order to make sure that's subdued. But you got to enforce it at this point. It's a matter of public safety.
So just so you guys know, Trump in his administration actually deemed that gun sales are actually essential in the time of crisis.
Yeah, so one of the things, though, I think is triggering about this discussion is we've seen the disparate treatment between how these protesters are treated versus how Black protesters are treated. Maya, you mentioned Ferguson. And we know that one of the things it's rooted in is the racial profiling and the racial animus that we experience as Black people. And it's not limited to the disparate treatment in terms of the protesters. It also applies to the issue of wearing masks. Now, a lot of officials are coming out and requiring that you wear masks. And we know that for Black people, that can pose a danger. And so this is where we start to talk about solutions. So one of the areas in which Senator Kamala Harris has led on has been racial profiling throughout her entire career. Specifically for COVID-19, she led a letter. It was her, Senator Cory Booker, and a few others led a letter to William Barr, who's the Attorney General, demanding that they institute racial bias and profiling training, implicit bias training for the DOJ, as well as flow that down to state and local officials. And I just want to read a quick passage from the letter, which I think is really important. It says here, recent cases also highlight the need for additional guidance on bias and enforcement during COVID-19 pandemic. If communities of color, especially African-American communities, feel at risk of disproportionate or selective enforcement, they may avoid seeking help or adopting precautionary measures recommended by the CDC. This in turn could have dire public health consequences, especially given that COVID-19 is already infecting and killing African Americans at an alarming and disproportionately high rates. And so some of the cases that are actually highlighted in this letter to William Barr, you all have probably seen the viral footage of the Miami doctor. This is a doctor who was cleaning out his truck. He's actually performing an amazing public service by going around and offering testing and sanitary supplies to homeless people in the city of Miami. And he was detained and handcuffed outside of his own home. He was doing absolutely nothing wrong. And so that situation is highlighted in this letter. A situation, we all saw the brutal footage of the black man on Southern Pennsylvania. He was on the bus and he was forcibly removed from the bus because he did not have a mask on. Where the hell can you get a mask? Everybody doesn't know how to spell. Everybody doesn't know how to DIY a mask. And so it highlights that this whole COVID-19 thing that we're experiencing poses dangers for Black people wearing masks. Like for instance, in Walmart, it's also highlighted in here where the Black men who were wearing surgical masks. We're not talking about bandana, we're talking about surgical masks were harassed outside of Walmart. It poses dangers for people who are not wearing masks, because then people take it upon themselves to be the enforcer. And so it's really important. This is the situation. This is why we do Live with the KHive, to highlight the fact that it matters who we have in these elected positions, who we have representing us, people that understand that different communities are impacted in different ways, and not just in terms of the health impact, but in the quality of life impact. And so that's just one of those things. And I just want to also peel it back a little bit more to talk about some of Kamala Harris's record, where, as I mentioned, she has been working on racial profiling for decades, actually combating it. When she was Attorney General, she was the first Department of Justice, the State Department of Justice, to require her her state officers rather, to wear body cameras. As Attorney General, she also issued guidance to law enforcement agencies requiring them to track racial profiling complaints. She swore in the racial profiling advisory board. She supported legislation to that effect. She created, this is another good one, the first commission on peace officers standards and training. It's called POST, which was certified law enforcement training on both procedural justice and implicit bias, the first of its kind in the country. And so, as I said, Senator Kamala Harris has been working on this for decades. She's a trusted advocate and elected official in that, and that's why it is critically important that we have her with a large voice and seat at the table, because this COVID-19 pandemic crisis is going to be with us for a very long time.
So one of the things that I would like to speak about today, when we're talking about war on people of color, I want to specifically focus on immigration and the work that Kamala is doing. But before I even get into that, I actually want to ask everyone that's watching this to just take a moment, and I want you to, as we're talking about these issues, think about your family and your friends. I want you to think about how you would feel if they were going through, racial profiling, if they were being attacked by the president, if they were being locked in cages, frankly. So I want you guys to hold on to the fact that these are human beings that are affected by all of these things. And I think that one thing that we can all appreciate with this COVID-19 crisis is that it's brought a lot of us together. I know for me personally, I don't really worry about getting sick. I worry about my parents getting sick. I worry about my family getting sick. I worry about friends of mine getting sick, but I don't really think about me. And so I want everyone to just, as we're speaking about all of these issues, I want you to bring it back home and think about, how would I feel if this was impacting my family? How would I feel if this was my friend that was going through this, right? So now, let's just hold on to that thought, and I'm going to talk about immigration, and I'm going to talk about what Kamala is doing right now to help children that are being detained by DHS and HHS. And so what's going on is, right now there are about 2,400 children that are being detained in Office of Refugee Resettlement facilities around the country. And at this very moment, at least 40 of them have already gotten sick with COVID-19. And something to think of is that these are children who are held in spaces where there is no social distancing. There is no encouragement to wash your hands. They're sharing spaces, bathrooms, bedrooms, living spaces, dining, they are in tight quarters with everyone else. And so if someone gets sick, there's a chance that they can all get sick. And so what Kamala has done this week, in partnership with Congresswoman Veronica Escobar, is that they actually they sent a letter to DHS and also HHS requesting that these children be released. Okay, because there's nothing that is being done to protect them. So I want you to think about your children. If your kids were in this space, how would you feel, right? And then we have to remember again that these are human beings. There's no reason for them to be treated this way. So Kamala has led on many of these issues since this whole crisis even started back, gosh, I mean, it's been weeks now, right? But in a few weeks ago, she actually partnered with Mazie Hirono to produce a bill that they have been fighting for to try and get into stimulus packages. That bill is called the Coronavirus Immigrant Families Protection Act, I believe is what it is. And it was the beginning of April that they introduced that. And what it is that basically it's designed to help immigrant communities. So whether it be funding for the CDC to produce, to do outreach and also produce content and educational resources that can help many of these communities by offering it all in multiple languages. That's included in the bill. There's also, I believe, resources that are going to be made for these immigrants to also feel comfortable with going to get treatment. And so I would encourage everyone to take a look at it. Again, they're fighting to try and get this bill into the next package. And so it may be beneficial if you can to try and call your representatives, your senators, and ask them if this is something that they can do for those families.
I'll add to that actually. One of the things that I've been frightened of when COVID became a national pandemic was I know the Republicans very well. I knew that they were going to try to figure out a way of how they were going to take advantage of the situation. They always have authoritarian leaning ideas and ideology. Stephen Miller, Trump's main advisor on immigration, who is a professional racist, is now trying to make the immigration ban permanent. So this is something that they're trying to do. What's difficult is a lot of people say, well, why can't Democrats come together and work on all of these issues and do a massive pushback? Well, it is very difficult because Democrats have a massive tent. We have so many things that we care about. We are more inclusive, right? Republicans, which is a majority white, 95% party, really is focused on keeping white supremacy alive. So it's a little bit easier for them to congeal around certain issues. This being one of them. This is one of the things that needs to have a cohesive, cogent response. I think that it will, because in New York City, immigration affects everything. It affects the fashion industry. It affects transportation. I think there will be an organized pushback, but I want people to be aware that this is not something that Stephen Miller and them are trying to do temporarily. They're trying to make it permanent. So I just wanted to bring that to the table.
Awesome. All right, cool. So with that being said, I want to segue into the resolution that I got an opportunity to take a look at that was introduced by Senator Harris as well as my Senator Tammy Duckworth in regards to hate crimes that are being committed against Asian Americans during this pandemic. And the one thing that really stuck out to me right away was the overt attention to detail that these members paid to this particular issue. You know, it seems that they've taken a lens and really honed in on, you know, issues that are particular to this particular group of people and marginalized people. And with Senator Harris at the head of leadership for this initiative, what this has shown, you know, what she's showing is that she's making it blaringly obvious that, you know, she is equipped to handle these kinds of heavy issues, you know, and she's ready to do this for the long haul. The one thing that I really noticed about this particular resolution, again, was just the great understanding of the unique experiences that these marginalized groups have. And that's something that she's also shown to other marginalized groups, with her leading on, same-sex marriage and ending the gay panic defense while she was DA and working, in the criminal justice system in the state of California. And Senator Harris is making the case, that she is ready to go the distance for a progressive racial agenda. And that's really, and in a post-Donald Trump world, this is exactly the kind of leadership that we're going to need. And it's going to be very important that whoever is involved in this new administration, should the Democrats win the nomination and win the election in November, we need members in the cabinet that, have that insight and are able to really speak to, those people who are largely left out of the conversation of equity. Right away was the overt attention to detail that these members paid to this particular issue. It seems that they've taken a lens and really honed in on, issues that are particular to this particular group of people and marginalized people. And with Senator Harris at the head of leadership for this initiative, what this has shown, what she's showing is that she's making it blaringly obvious that, she is equipped to handle these kinds of heavy issues, and she's ready to do this for the long haul. The one thing that I really noticed about this particular resolution, again, was just the great understanding of the unique experiences that these marginalized groups have. And that's something that she's also shown to other marginalized groups, with her leading on same-sex marriage and ending the gay panic defense while she was DA and working in the criminal justice system in the state of California. And Senator Harris is making the case that she is ready to go the distance for a progressive racial agenda. And that's really, and in a post-Donald Trump world, this is exactly the kind of leadership that we're going to need. And it's going to be very important that whoever is involved in this new administration, should the Democrats win the nomination and win the election in November, we need members in the cabinet that, have that insight and are able to really speak to, those people who are largely left out of the conversation of equity.
Does anybody have anything to add? Well, great point, Sydney. We're going to go ahead and move over to Kamala news.
Awesome. And with that, we're going to segue into another conversation in regards to racial equity, and on the heels of a wonderful 420 that I spent in my house enjoying the fruits of 420. I want to just jump back into the marijuana legalization bill that Kamala Harris got passed through the House not too long ago. And again, this just springboards back to the conversation about the attention to detail that Senator Harris, as a leader in legislating, policy regarding and involving racial equity, it just springboards back to, again, that resume. Kamala Harris is proving again that, she has paid attention to, the most serious issues that are, plaguing marginalized communities, especially the Black community. We've seen time and time again, that Black and brown individuals are often caught in the system, as, when it pertains to, things like drug use and marijuana possession and drug possession. We know that the war on drugs was a failed experiment. And Kamala Harris knows that too. And what we're seeing here with this particular bill is we're seeing for the first time in a long time a in my opinion, the most progressive cannabis legalization bill that we've ever seen in this country's history. And we're talking pre-prohibition, because let's face it, Black people weren't, involved in marijuana, from a business standpoint, before prohibition. And so now what we're seeing is we're seeing Kamala Harris take leadership in making sure that, the folks who were left out prior, during prohibition, and, once it moved on from that to the war on drugs, we're starting to see that Kamala Harris is leading to, again, ensure that this involves racial equity, and that is at the core of her values. And that seems to be a reoccurring theme with everything that she's legislated. She's always putting that at the front of her mind. And again, it is important that members of the Democratic Party who want to appeal to the base of the Democratic Party understand exactly what that means. We want racial equity. That doesn't mean, we don't want just a seat at the table. We want a piece of the table to own. And I think that needs to be important. And Kamala Harris has proven that she understands that from not just a political standpoint, but a personal one as well.
Actually, I just want to add to that really quickly, and just with the case of cannabis legalization, understanding that when we were younger, growing up, we were taught that cannabis or weed marijuana is a gateway drug. They told us the myth that it would lead to other drugs. They were half right, only it's not a gateway to other drugs, it's a gateway for Black bodies into the criminal justice system. It's the actual substance that people use to criminalize, introduce Black people, even for the smallest offenses, whether it's just a minor possession, just having that something that you have maybe a gram on you or 2 grams on you, you're already messing your future up. Understand? So what that actually is, the introductory substance, just to keep the wheels on that prison pipeline just turning freely. So what this does, it takes away that. It takes a big blow. Remember what I spoke about earlier, how whenever Kamala does something, there's a system attached to it that she's actually attacking. And this is what you have to look at the bigger picture of it. Yes, individual thing, what's the bigger picture? And that's really where we're going with this. So you're getting ready to see more, hopefully, as this thing passes and as it moves to a more progressive future, more equity, at least as it comes in the criminal justice system, especially with cannabis.
Yeah, I would like to add to that as well. In New York, we're really kind of struggling with passage of decriminalization. I have actually been talking to some of Cuomo's people about it because I wanted to know the pathway of how they're going to go about it. Is it going to be equitable distribution and how they're going to give out licensing? I think now, because of COVID, while Republicans have these opportunities, Democrats and liberals also have massive opportunities. One of the things that I was talking to Cuomo's policy person about was the fact that legalization, decriminalization will help with these state budget shortfalls as well. It won't erase everything, but it's a start, and we need all the money that we can get right now. But we have to be actively talking and communicating with the policy crafters, makers, to make sure that they understand that, while they're having all these television shows about cooking with cannabis, it's still illegal for people and they're still in jail for tiny bits. So to me, I'm not ready for us to be celebrating all of this until we make sure that the records are expunged, because we know this is a massive issue where people can't get jobs if they still have that possession on their record, and also equitable distribution.
Absolutely.
And Kamala's the perfect one to be handling that responsibility. When you look at her record, especially as DA in San Francisco, the office policy there in DA was to make sure, again, that simple possession does not result in incarceration. That felony cases of marijuana were pleaded down to less serious offenses because she understood, again, it's not about the actual substance itself. The substance itself is not the worst thing in the world. It's almost harmless, to be honest with you. Obviously, more study needs to be done, but let's be honest here. The real thing is making sure that that bodies fill those prisons and such. Kamala saw that way back when I was in high school, so I think she's the perfect person to be doing that now.
It heals. Okay, don't let anyone tell y'all different. Cannabis heals. It makes you a better person. Not only is it not a gateway drug, but it will change your life forever. You will be a better human being. You will get closer to God. Ask me how I know.
Roll up.
Take your word for that.
I think today is the anniversary of Friday, right? So pop gigs, right?
Shout out to my boy Cube. Let's go. You know him.
Yes.
LA.
Yes.
What up?
Rest in peace, Pop.
Rest in peace, Pops.
All
For
right,
the record,
next
we're
up
not
to Joe.
actors, okay? Just because we're quoting a movie does not mean that we're actors.
Okay.
But to put
I am Hollywood though. Y'all call me.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, so I do have some other things I do want to address in terms of Kamala news. This was an incredibly busy week, but on this topic still, we, Sydney already addressed her marijuana justice and Opportunity and Reinvestment Act, the MORE Act, which touched upon all the things that Maya and Drew also discussed. But one of the things that Kamala was part of fighting for in this COVID relief package, which just passed in Congress, $400-something billion for small businesses. She was a part of an effort to try to get cannabis small businesses access to the Paycheck Protection Program. And part of the letter, they pointed out that there are 240,000 workers in the United States in 33 states and DC that the cannabis industry supports. And so because it's illegal on the federal level, there are some, roadblocks there. So that's just another example of putting your money where your mouth is, not just sponsoring legislation, which is obviously a big deal, but also taking these incremental steps to try to ensure that even without the passage of legislation, you can affect change through these legislative packages that are happening. So I'm probably certain that it wasn't successful because Mitch McConnell is still the majority leader and Chuck Schumer is the minority leader, but power concedes nothing without demand. That's what Frederick Douglass says. And so I think it is important to note the types of efforts that are put forth by Kamala and others, but we're live with the KHive, so we focus in on Kamala for these kinds of things. And so a couple of other things. The main topic I want to discuss in Kamala news is fundraising, because that's a huge deal right now. Vice President Joe Biden had a big quarter, but he's just started to turn the corner in terms of his fundraising challenges. But before I get to that, I did want to just highlight a couple of things very quickly. We've talked about the war on people of color, the racial profiling, the different things. But one of the things that Senator Kamala Harris led on, as well as Senator Gary Peters, Congresswoman Marsha Fudge, who's amazing, and Congressman Cedric Richmond, they sent a letter to DHS and FEMA to demand that FEMA is transparent in their plans to address the existing racial and socioeconomic disparities in disaster response. So we saw the disparities in the response between Houston versus Puerto Rico. We saw the disparate responses in Hurricane Katrina, which is something that I've heard Kamala Harris mention several times when she talks about how these disasters hit harder communities of color. So I thought that was important to highlight. The administration got a bunch of people together, a bunch of Black thought leaders and people like that to have a conference call with. That's fine, but let's make these plans transparent. Let's not just be about talk. Another thing that's really important is Senator Kamala Harris led on a bill with Kristen Gillibrand and Bernie Sanders to fight hunger. And it's called Closing the Meal Gap of 2020, and it expands SNAP. And I think it was also, don't quote me, but I think it was also taking away the work requirements for SNAP. A lot of Republicans in different places have attacked SNAP recipients by making these work requirements, which is also something that they've conveniently found a way to exempt predominantly white communities of color from having to have that work requirement for welfare or SNAP or whatever it is. So that's another important thing. But the main thing I wanted to touch on was fundraising, because I think that one of the big differentiators in this election is going to be fundraising. We know that the Republicans have all the PACs. They have a lot more billionaires who are willing to spend unlimited amounts of money. Donald Trump has raised hundreds of millions of dollars already for his re-election campaign. We also are trying to flip the Senate so that we can get Democratic control, so that if Joe Biden does get elected, we can actually get something accomplished in the Senate. We also need to hold on to the House. That's not a foregone conclusion if we don't fundraise and support. The whole House is up for re-election every 2 years. And so one of the things that Senator Kamala Harris did this week was she's been holding virtual meet and greets with these flippable Senate seats. So she held a virtual meet and greet with Montana Governor Steve Bullock, where she's introduced him to people. She also did one for South Carolina for Jamie Harrison, who's running for the Senate seat to try to unseat Lindsey Graham. And she also did a virtual meet and greet with Sarah Gideon, who's trying to unseat Susan Collins down in Maine. And so with Jamie Harrison, as a result of Senator Kamala Harris's meet and greet, he actually secured bundlers. So people who were bundling money. Now, if you are one of those people that think everybody should be funding elections with $25 an hour, then this is not going to resonate with you. But for everybody else who likes to keep their little coins and have people who can afford to write $2,000 checks, finance it, then maybe this sounds appealing to you. But anyway, bundlers were secured through that virtual meet and greet. And so that's just some of the efforts that she's been taking. She also had a fundraiser for Vice President Joe Biden, a virtual fundraiser. That's where you guys might have heard the whole "I'm coming for your kid" comment. But I also want to point out that she's used her platform to raise money for nonprofits throughout this, for domestic workers, for farm workers, for just a whole variety of things. In 2018, for the midterms, she was the most requested surrogate throughout the country. Her PAC, which is a lot of the congressional leaders and people have PACs in which they use to fund other candidates. Fearless for the People PAC raised over $2.4 million during the midterms, more than any other senator. And she used that to give money to people like Ayanna Pressley and Lauren Underwood and Lucy McBath and senators, swing state senators. She raised money for Sherrod Brown, all kinds of things. So she has a history of raising money, not just for herself, but for the party. She's a party builder, she's a team player, and she's a powerhouse. And so that is just another thing to consider, where when you're looking at the vice presidential nominees and potential candidates, you have to look at the broad spectrum of what a person brings to the table. And Kamala Harris brings that fundraising dynamic and presence in which people are enthusiastic about these small dollar fundraisers, and they're enthusiastic about showing up to rallies, to dinners and things like that. And so that's just another notch in Kamala Harris's belt.
I want to let everyone, all the viewers watching this know, number one, I am a superstar. No, I'm just kidding. No, but anyway, since somebody thought I was an actress, let's just address it. No, but what I really want to address is I want to make sure that people know that the Democrats do not they don't hold supermajority in any capacity. Okay, if you are seeing that from some lovely popular folks on Twitter, please understand that is fake news. It's almost as poisonous as like drinking bleach or whatever, so don't let the fake news poison you. The Democrats don't hold a supermajority in any capacity, and that's what we need to do in November. We need to get the Democrats to a supermajority so that they can start passing these progressive initiatives and bills, because Mitch McConnell, aka Murder Mitch, is putting a stop to all of the progressive initiatives. Nobody can get anything passed because he is blocking essentially everything. So I
just want to add one other thing to that. Please be aware of everything that's going on. Just pay attention to what Kamala Harris is actually doing. I know a lot of people are still running with it. Not all skin folk are kinfolk, but we've pretty much highlighted all the things that Kamala Harris has been doing for the Black community, not just now, but things that she's done in the past. So if looking at her past record and the things that she said that she wants to do, lets you know that Kamala Harris has that ability to get the job done. You just have to give her the ability to do it. So we have to literally advocate for somebody who's advocating for us. So we need that representation, and Kamala Harris is that. And the other thing I want other people to understand is we need to stay alive until November so we can vote this motherfucker out the house. And that's what we need to do. So everybody stay your ass in the house. So we're going to go ahead and move over to our final topic, which is erasure. And this is really, really important, y'all.
I'm going to be pretty frank. After the whole CNN debacle where they left Kamala off and they only had 3 white women listed as potential vice president candidates, you know, shortlisted for Joe Biden. I was pretty heated. I got on Twitter because that's where we all go, right? I got on Twitter. I was angry, and it really was just it just what I've been telling people is, you know, no one advocates for or even really champions Black women like a Black woman. And so what we saw in the primary was just a hot mess. We saw 80 candidates, you know, a whole football team of candidates were out there running to be president. And 68% of the online attacks were for Kamala. I mean, it was ridiculous. I was having conversations with people where, you know, offline, where I'm trying to advocate for Kamala, and they're repeating stuff that you hear from trolls on Twitter. And so I think not seeing Kamala represented in that graphic was just kind of, for me, a bit of a trigger. And I had enough. You know, I flatly told people, you know, look, if you can't understand the importance of, you know, if you can't realize that, you know, this isn't just Black women standing up and shouting, you know, for no reason. This is an important moment for us. And if you can't understand why, and you can't take a step back and realize that, yes, it is time for a Black woman to have a seat at the table, then you're not one of our allies. You're just not. You are somebody who is fine with us showing up to vote and voting for, you know, the Democratic Party. You know, when y'all need us, you guys come, you show up at the church, you show up at the salon, you come to our communities, you do your little town halls in Compton, the South Side, South Carolina, in our communities, and you bring all your white people with you. Because, you know, when we're doing the town halls, it's only 10 Black folks are just kind of spread out in the crowd. That's our representation. And then you show up with your PDFs and your talking points, and that's what we get. You know, you come on our entertainment, you come on just all of you infiltrate our spaces to push your little PDFs and your talking points, and a lot of it that you call policy, you've taken from a Black woman that's in Congress. So I just had enough, because I feel like, frankly, the only person who has really spoken to our issues on a national level, on the national stage recently, has been Kamala Harris. The only person who can go into these spaces and have conversations where she's not just going off of PDFs. She's not just circling back around to her talking points, her 3 little talking points, is Kamala Harris. You know, she can speak to everything that matters to us, and she can do it by speaking about our history, how we got here, talking about what we're dealing with now, and how we're going to get to the future. That's what she does. And so I just had enough with CNN. I had enough with a lot of people. And I was just like, listen, if you cannot respect that this is our time to have someone represent us, then, like I said, you're not an ally in this moment. You don't get it.
I would like to add to that, because what happened with the CNN Cryon is basically what has been happening forever now, which is there's a lack of inclusivity, there's a lack of representation, there's a lack of diversity in the newsroom. That's clear. If you had one brown person, one Black person in that room, they would have been like, oh my God, you're missing Kamala Harris. She's polling at the top of VP every single time. That would have been fixed. That's just, so to me, what those people did, Kamala was literally just out of their mind. It could be something vicious, but to me, it's as simple as, I just don't even see her. I don't see black issues. I don't see black issues. So it's just not in their mind, okay? So to me, that's what's been happening. It happened the entire election. One of the things that I was really frustrated with Kamala's erasure from the beginning was there was two things. One, the Russian troll bot farm was expansive. Every time she makes a comment, every time it's mentioned that she might be VP, you see the trolls coming out of the woodwork. You see what is effective in having people repeat those. When you say, Kenny, when you said some of the things that you've heard repeated from trolls, right? This has been happening. It will continue to happen if she's picked, but it will happen if Stacey Abrams is picked, if Val Demings is picked. This is going to be the issue. It doesn't matter. That shouldn't scare Joe Biden from picking a black woman. Right now, there's a petition online right now that over 200 black women have signed. It's featured in the Washington Post. I'm shocked, but it is featured in the Washington Post because we're seeing that the idea of an all-white ticket, a two-person that's over 70-year-old white ticket, is going to hurt Joe Biden. We already see that it is. We saw the statistic. He's polling 5% less with Black and Latinx people than Hillary was. And she was already polling less than Barack was. So we know that there is an issue here. So to me, I want Joe Biden to really hear that and not lead from a place of fear. That sounds very psychology of me, but not lead from a place of fear. This idea that he has to pick someone from the Midwest is absolutely insane when black women vote 6% above the national average. I want people to hear that, understand that. Them trying to placate Bernie supporters, the fearful of Trump supporters are trying to win them over is a fool's errand. You're not going to switch them. You should instead invest in the people that Kamala sees, that support her, that will show up.
I want to speak about why that particular incident really bothered me. And most people know, I don't make this, I make this very known on Twitter. You know, I'm a black woman in big tech. There's not many of us. I have, for the last 3 years, been, in spaces where I'm the only black person in the room. And so seeing Kamala erased in that way really resonated with me because I know what it feels like. I know exactly, what I can completely relate. I've had, managers completely, tell me to my face, I never even looked at your resume. I didn't even know that you had this, it's literally just not even, and this is multiple managers. This isn't just one person, and then these people are obviously white, white men and white women. But that says something to a larger issue that we have in this country in regards to, loving and seeing black women. It's one thing to say, vote like a black woman, but it's another thing to say, I see your humanity. I understand that you're a human being just like me. I mean, a lot of times what happens is that, black women get caught in the trope of the strong black woman. We can just deal with it. We're okay. We're going to just roll with the punches. We don't really care. We don't really have a choice. And I think that that's a mistake. I think that to assume, like we said on the last, episode, Joe Biden does not have the black vote. You do not have the blacks. So it's safe to say that if you see us being erased and we're still here, we still want to, give the benefit of the doubt, and we want, and we understand how important it is to, have someone in the White House that is, the polar opposite of Donald Trump. We are, we do have demands, and we're here and we're not going anywhere, and we need to be included. And an all-white ticket is just not the answer in 2020.
I think the funny part about this is, though, Joe Biden should know this better than anybody because obviously he has the record in the Senate and such. But as far as his time in 8 years in the White House, to get there, he was part of the most progressive ticket in American history. It was a black man running as president. Joe Biden as his running mate than vice president. So if anybody knows the just value of having not a non-all-white ticket, something that actually represents America, it should be Joe Biden. And so that's one of the things that is kind of interesting to me when I see these other people, other names being thrown out. It's like, these other people, I understand that. But you're talking about a man who got into the White House in the first place. Number one, obviously, because he was able to challenge Barack enough in the primaries and such, but also just the fact of that diverse thinking and that diverse ticket. We cannot go into another race with an all-white ticket. Joe Biden knows that better than anybody, and I need him to go ahead and act like it.
Well, the problem that a lot of people are facing right now is that when it comes to erasure, this isn't something new that's been like that just happened with CNN. This isn't something that just miraculously happened one time. This has been going on since the very beginning, since she announced. Literally, they left her out of the Giffords Gun commercial forum on MSNBC on purpose. You can't say that they didn't, or they did it by accident when she had the largest clip in the commercial. And it's just weird to me that they continue to keep their fingers pressed on the scale. And we need to, as voters, if we need to, as a public and as the KHive, we need to hold these people accountable for the things that they're doing, because they're putting their fingers on the scale and they're trying to influence the election like they did in 2016. These false equivalencies, they're not doing any fact checking. They're not holding everybody literally accountable or treating each other fairly. If they can cover one person's Medicare for all and go in detail about what it does and can't do the same thing for other candidates like Kamala Harris, then this needs to be talked about and this needs to be addressed. But it's more than just erasure. It's mainly disrespect at this point. And I'm glad that this didn't just happen to Kamala Harris. I'm glad that it just wasn't just directly towards her. I'm glad they also showed that they also did the same thing to Stacey Abrams. I also left her out as well. Because this is not just a Kamala issue for other people who think that, oh, the reason why they're doing it is because of Kamala Harris. No, it has something to do with racial identity. And I'm glad that we're actually bringing a light to this, and we actually need to go ahead and address it. And the other thing that I want people to understand is, I keep saying this, is that people say, oh, let's vote like a Black woman, but how about actually voting for the Black woman? Let's actually have some representation. And one thing that I wanted to also add to that, Sydney, is you were talking about you're the only Black woman in your workspace. Pretty much the reason why they probably don't look at your resume or look at resumes of other African-American women is because they're looking for a seat filler. And right now, we don't want a seat filler. We want a seat at the table, but we also want somebody who's going to represent the collective and actually has a record of actually getting that job done, which is why we advocate so heavy for Kamala Harris, because her record shows that. We don't want a seat filler. We don't want we don't want like somebody who's just going to be a figurehead that represents Black America, because we're not a monolithic people. So we need that representation.
One thing I do want to add, though, on the topic of erasure specifically, is that clip to me really shows a major challenge that Black women have. The thing about Kamala is a person who throughout the primaries always had some of the she had the highest rated CNN town hall. She had the highest rated hours in the climate change CNN town hall. She had the highest rated MSNBC town hall. She had some of the highest rated late night TV shows. The problem, and the reason why Senator Kamala Harris only got 3% of the media mentions in some weeks, this is statistics, this is quantitative data that's available. In some cases, Kamala would get 150 mentions in the media compared to 1,200 for Elizabeth Warren, and 2,000 for Bernie and 3,000 for Biden is what's called earned media. And Maya, you can correct me if I'm not saying this right, but when she's on the screen, they don't have a problem. Oh, Kamala, you're so wonderful. You're so fabulous. We're happy to have you. But the problem is that when she's not on the screen, then she's forgotten about. And that's where, as Maya mentioned, the editorial choices that are made. And that's where one of the things that the KHive tried to do a Kamala connection, where we were trying to amplify Kamala's work to keep her in front of mind for these people that will appear on these TV shows. And even when it comes to Black media, there was still an erasure of Kamala Harris on Black media. I know on Roland Martin, one of the things that I make a point to do, because I'm on there on Thursdays, is to weave Kamala into the conversations, because you would hear about a Warren connection, you would hear about a Bernie Sanders connection, but yet you don't necessarily have even Black pundits mentioning Kamala Harris. And so that is the problem that we have with erasure, where a lot of times Black women, as you said, Sydney, they aren't necessarily even thought about at all. And so when you're not thought about, then you're not going to be part of the conversation. That's why the onus is on us to continue to amplify and advocate and make sure that this erasure is pushed back on. And as everybody has already stated, it's not just a Kamala thing. Kamala was the Black woman in the race, but it's going to always be another Black woman. Or in this case, we have several Black women who were all erased by what CNN did. And so people that think that, oh, the KHive is just loud and they're just, loud and pushy about Kamala. Okay, well, guess what? If your person is selected, you're going to have to be just as loud, because that erasure and that marginalization is going to happen because they are a Black woman, period. It's just Kamala Harris is the Black woman that actually got out there and put some skin in the game and ran and tried to make history, doing something that only 2 Black women had ever tried to do, is run for a major party's nominee. And so Kamala Harris is the one who put in the work for a year to try to get that nomination. And so she's the one that is first of mind to be erased and to be marginalized, but no Black woman is going to be exempt. And that's something that people are finding out, that if they didn't know, that CNN graphic, as Kenny said, says it's not just a Kamala thing, it's a Black woman thing.
So I want to just add to that really quickly, just because I want to say, Reecie, the way you framed that is completely missing from the media, okay? People don't know how to frame that argument, and you framed it very succinctly, which is that this is a microcosm of the way that Kamala Harris is being treated. It is that is just the tip of the iceberg of how Black women are treated, okay? My friend Dr. Hazel Levy, is a virologist at UF. Her students say, hey, Hazel. She said, no, I'm Dr. Levy. She's a Black woman. She wants to be respected in that way, but because they're not used to seeing Black women scientists, they don't know how to talk to her. So us pushing back is speaking to the larger issue. And I would love for the media to see it that way too.
That's great. I mean, I want to add one last thing to it, but honestly, we really need to start holding the Black blue check marks, is what I call them. Literally, we need to hold them accountable, because they're literally the representation of us, I guess, what white America sees, because they're the only ones who have the platform and the numbers of followers and the number of things that they can actually go on these platforms and represent us. But they're not even trying to allow Black women like Kamala Harris to even be seen. It seems that they're more interested in white validation rather than actually standing up for the rest of us as a collective. And that's the part that's really frustrating to me, when I see people who look like me not advocating for other people who are actually representing me. So that's when I really get frustrated. And those are the same people that are literally, leading these narratives. The Kamala Harris is a cop and helping spin these narratives because they have an explicit bias for another candidate. So what we need to do is hold those people accountable, and we also need to pull those receipts. KHive isn't somebody just crazy like Reecie said. The reason why we go off the way we do is because we're not going to allow you to erase somebody who's fought for us. Mm-hmm. And that's just period, point blank.
We don't attack, we just tell the truth. Simple as that.
Exactly.
And I do want to add one more thing to that too, because one thing that I noticed is that because Kamala Harris is a Black woman, there's a lot of latitude given to misstatements or even ignorance about her positions, where if you cannot get on MSNBC channel and not know Bernie Sanders is Medicare for all, or you cannot get on MSNBC and not know Elizabeth Warren has a wealth tax, or whatever, fill in the blank on whichever candidate that you want to refer to. But because of Kamala Harris's, because she's a Black woman, there was no care taken to make sure that you're not misstating her positions, to make sure that you weren't misstating her policies, to make sure that you were informed of her policies. And so I would like, as you said, Kenny, for Black people who are in a position of authority in the media to take care to do just as much research on Senator Kamala Harris as you would on anybody else. Don't phone it in because it's a Black woman, and perhaps maybe MSNBC or CNN doesn't value that Black woman as a candidate. and because you can get away with it, but just do the care, do the research, do it, be just as vigilant as you would if you were talking about any other white candidate. Make sure you keep that same energy and you're being informed as you are when you're talking about a Black woman.
And the bottom line, America, and for everybody else watching this, if you're new and you don't know much about Kamala Harris, it's up to you, honestly, to do the research, because nobody's going to do that for you. I mean, there's plenty of videos that we have, Reecie, myself, Drew comments, of course. We have videos that have the work done for you if you want to be lazy and just, you know, go to the video. It's up there. But I'm just saying, you have to double check us, because honestly, like I said, I'm biased. I could be lying, but I'm not. I'm just saying you need to do your own research.
I am Receipts Cobra for a reason, Chad. I have my research. I have never found anybody refute anything that I've had to say ever.
And like we said last week, all parties involved are not disinterested parties. So understand that everybody you talk to has an agenda for November.
But we do
exactly.
want you to do your own research. Try to prove me wrong. You can't, but you can do it. Go ahead and try.
But please, really do your own research so you can hold these people accountable, because at the end of the day, it was easy for these people to lie on Kamala Harris because she was fairly new to the game. She's only been in the Senate for 3 years now. She's fairly new. A lot of people are just hearing about her. Most people who literally actually was interested in Kamala Harris didn't know much research about it, which is why her ratings were so high when she did her town halls, because a lot of people didn't know anything about her. They were also very interested in getting to know her. But it's up to us, honestly, to do that research, double check, and make sure that we're vetting these people properly and making sure that the information that are coming out is correct. Because if we allow them to lie on Kamala Harris, they can lie on all of us. So it's really up to us, Black America. So please pay attention. All right, it's been a great live with the KHive, and thank you guys for watching. And y'all have a good night, okay?
Bye, America.